This is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff and that's Jim. Hey, partner.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I
can't open the show any other way than, hey, Jeff, how are you?
Yeah, I know. You're on autopilot, and I just can't get past the ensemble, the hat, the jacket.
But Ian just said he felt like he was sitting across the table from a Texas Hold'em dealer or player or something like that. So I'll go with that.
It was a year ago. We sat up in the suite with head Kvetz from Silverfort, and you were dressed like a olden times poker dealer or whatever from like a Western. And I feel like you're really kind of growing into this Texas theme here.
Well, we're in Texas, right? We're at the Gartner IAM Summit 2025. I actually ran into head. They've got a big Silverfort presence downstairs. I love coming to these conferences and running into old friends, making new friends. I mean, it's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm usually stuck in this room recording and editing, but I do get out a chance to talk to people and stuff like that. So shout out to Gartner for giving us this space to record in.
Shout out.
RSM for getting us out here. So shout out RSM.
You got the RSM shirt on.
That's actually our real jobs. People think we do the podcast like full time. Not even close.
Yeah.
RSM pays the bills and the podcast generates them. That's how I look at it.
That's pretty much the case, yeah. Well, look, we're very fortunate to be able to come to as many conferences as we do. Most of the practitioners out there get to go to one or two a year. Hopefully by tuning into the podcast, you can get kind of what's going on in all these conferences, and we bring in great guests like Ian to kind of give a bite-sized version of kind of what the industry is talking about.
It's like a hallway conversation, but broadcast.
There you go.
So, it's kind of like that. One thing that I'm going to bring up, because we're recording this at Gartner. It's December 8th. It's not going to go live until January, but by the time people listen to this, we will probably be at 1.5 million downloads.
Pretty impressive, right?
Absolutely nuts. Over the course of 6.5 years or so ever that we've been doing this.
Yeah, but like the first 4 years, it was like
nobody.
Not even 500,000 downloads, right? So
yeah, it was not even close to 500,000.
Not even close.
Whatever. But for whatever reason. So
thank you to all the folks who listen and make us part of their lives, and whether it's a drive to work or time on the treadmill or however you carve out time for it. Jeff and I are extremely grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, it's very cool. Whether you love it or hate it, either way, it works. That's super cool. So we'll keep doing it.
If you hate it and you listen every week,
some
you got
people
issues.
Hate watch, hate listen. That's fine. Like, okay, I'm not going to say that I'm the cup of tea for everybody, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes here. We're going to introduce Ian, and it just says intro him somehow. So Ian Glazer, welcome back.
That technically meets the requirements of intro him somehow. Thank you guys. It's great to be here. I can't believe almost 1.5 million downloads.
Yeah.
God. And 6.5 years.
6.5 years, yeah. July 2nd, 2019 is our birthday.
That was the before times.
It was. The right before the before time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yep. Thank you guys again. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to come and spend some time with you.
Well, you've been with us several times at this point. I think if you just go to idacpodcast.com and just search and just type Ian, there'll be like, I don't know, 8, 9 different episodes. We were having a little bit of a check to see like how many times you've been on. I think Andrew Shikiar is still the lead.
Right. Well, that means that there's enough footage to when I answer your questions now to go back and be like, wait a minute, he's contradicting himself. In episode 35, he said the following. Like, there's going to be all sorts of discontinuity. Like, the canon is all.
He's not wearing the same shirt.
That's an edit. That's an edit.
But you know what? That's a sign of growth. Just because you believe something today doesn't mean that you can't be presented with new information tomorrow.
That's absolutely right.
You'll change your opinion on something. That's totally fine. We can all get smarter. I think we're okay with that. So let's see. When's the last time we actually chatted? Because I feel like I've seen you at a couple different conferences throughout the year.
I think probably the last time I sat down in this sort of format was Authenticate last year with some of the DIAF winners, actually. I think the Digital Identity Advancement Foundation folks, we had 1 or 2 winners. Grace was there.
Yep, Grace. And Diane.
Yeah, right. So I think that's probably the last time I've sat in this capacity with you all.
Well, thanks for joining us again. I feel like there's so much to cover. I know, Jim, you've got like a laundry list of questions.
Yeah,
That are not at all AI generated, I have been told.
You're right. You just have to believe us on it.
AI might have helped, but
And the hat is not AI or the jacket.
No,
That
this is real Jim. This is not.
you ever
This is not
This is not nano banana.
if you see me at Walmart, I might look just like this.
I say this is not something that AI could even think about hallucinating or dreaming of.
No, because he's not wearing jorts. If he was
100%.
wearing jorts, then obviously.
Then obviously,
Well,
right?
you know, the camera angle's not catching below it. It's
And we're
Sports
all
Center
thankful
suit.
for that. So,
I just thought of something though. Grace Klutke, who you guys gave the scholarship to.
Yeah.
She's been very active.
She has.
I feel like that is exactly what DIAF is all about. So first off, for those who don't know what DIAF is, do you want to just give?
sure, the short version is this. The Digital Identity Advancement Foundation, DIAF, was created to address the global short staffing essentially we have in identity. And really it was to attack the problem of how do people get involved. Get involved just generally. They're coming from a socioeconomic situation, a geographic situation where they don't have necessarily the same identity community that many of us are lucky enough to have, and they want in somehow, right? So how do we get those people from Bhutan to EIC, for example? The other mission was to look at participation in technical standards. And this is a crucially important thing for our industry. We've heard it throughout the day in sessions. And this was the sort of other half of what we're doing is how do we get more people involved in technical standards processes and contributing to those standards? The awards that we have honor two late great friends of ours, Kim Cameron and Vittorio Bertocci. And it's been around for a couple of years now, and we're excited for opening up new scholarship opportunities next year.
That's awesome. It's a great cause. It's something that Jeff and I have contributed to. You've been really active. I mean, you've been a cornerstone or a keystone of this community for a couple decades now. And you keep coming
Almost
up with
too long, Ian.
A while. Can we keep it at a while? I'm putting in a talk for Identiverse for next year. I don't know if we'll get selected, but I'm putting in a talk. It's a panel. And right now the working title is 100 years of identity experience. You'd think we'd be better at this. And it's got some friends of the show on it. So I've been doing it for a little while.
Yeah. Well, it's a great point. It kind of brings me to this question. So I saw your presentation. I think it was at Authenticate. And you talked about kind of the failures of Enron, which was around, not having the right controls in place.
Yep.
And the industry, kind of the outcome of that was Sarbanes-Oxley. And that's kind of been a driver for identity. It was supposed to be probably for the first 10 years afterwards, we get it all fixed and then we move on to other things. But it feels like in a lot of ways, we're still trying to solve those problems in the same kind of ways. And it seems like it's broken.
Look at it this way. Your approach to IGA, one's approach, I don't mean yours individually, but one's approach to IGA at this point is old enough to rent a car, right? It's like 25 years old. We've been basically doing the same kinds of things. And it is really a very strong reaction to Sarbanes-Oxley around segregation of duty, around review of access, ongoing access control, and access certification. Now, there is a lot of goodness inside of that. But the reality is, when you hear, we're 5 years into our IGA deployment and we're still not there yet, it makes me think that it's a lifestyle and not necessarily a program or a project. And that the outcomes are fine. Not great, fine, right? We've ended up creating a bunch of burden and friction with access request processes and with access certification processes. For example, managers having to review all of these things. They work to a point, but we're still seeing outcomes related to access-related risk, right? We're still seeing negative consequences, whether it is abuse or it's misuse. Standing access is still a huge problem. And this is not for lack of trying. Right? You guys know better than most. Like, there are organizations who are really determined and really great practitioners really determined to solve these problems, to address what has been challenging the organization for years, to fill those compliance gaps, to fill those productivity gaps, and yet they can't make as much progress as they want to. It's not because they're not trying hard enough. That sort of tells me, maybe it's time for something else. And 25 years is how demographers measure what a generation is. So the talk I gave at Authenticate was really about, like, I think there's some generational change happening. Legitimately, we are seeing the emergence of what next looks like. And I don't mean next gen in a very marketing kind of way. I mean, like, literally, we are now on to seeing there are other patterns emerging that can help not just address where we have been and where we are coming from, but actually define where the sort of new standard should look like. What does the new pattern of an identity stack look like? What do those interaction models look like? And I'm really excited to see that start to bloom.
Yeah, so it seems like there's so many factors that could be contributing to kind of where we are. There's, technology factors in terms of, like, the technology is going faster than the IAM department can keep up with it. There's the fact that it can be really expensive, and when companies go through tough times, they tend to pull back. I mean, we all like to think you can't cancel cybersecurity, and that's probably true, but you can spend less on it.
Yep.
And then there's kind of just like technology limitations, like how far can you take it? I think one of the things is, sometimes I talk to folks where it's like, yeah, we've got 300 apps integrated to our IGA system. And that's different than we don't even have an IGA system. But
right.
The 300 apps, doesn't that kind of like lock you into a technology too? So I guess to turn that into a question is, like, what do you think the biggest factor is that's kind of held the industry back?
Biggest is a little bit of a hard question to answer, but I think among the things, one is that we're sort of pinned in by what we believe to be as the art of the possible. And it's really hard as an IAM practitioner, an IAM leader, to say, I'm going to go in a radically different direction, right? Whether simply that vision is too hard to make into architecture, or it is that you simply can't because internal or external audit has a set of expectations. The industry you work in has a set of expectations and common practices. And to be an iconoclast in doing that, or to say, I'm going to try something different, that takes an enormous amount of courage and clout and political willpower. And so I think partially there is sort of organizational restrictions, part one. Part two is nobody really wants to be the first person off the diving board, right? It's like, I'd like to see someone else go in and tell me how the water is before I do that. And I think that's why running in parallel, I don't know when this is going to air, but ID Pro is doing this really great 4-part series on continuous identity with Andrew Cameron and Sean O'Dell and Heather Flanagan. And so they've just done part one. So this is the first week of December. The part one just got aired. Parts 2, 3, and 4 are coming in January and a little in February. So these are practitioners who've come up with different models, different ways of doing things in differing industries, in differing states of their deployment, but they're talking very openly. This is sort of a redo of a talk they gave at Identiverse. They're being very generous with their time. But if you're interested in seeing sort of what this can look like, if you want to see that other person off the springboard and into the pool, this is a great live example. It's happening alongside of this recording, which is really, really neat.
That's a great segue, because that was kind of next on the list, was to talk about this thing called continuous identity. It's gotten hot this year, right?
Yep.
Sean and Andrew have been talking about it. I think you've been talking about it as well. For people who aren't familiar, what is the elevator pitch? 30 seconds on what is continuous identity.
Sure. Continuous identity is a way to break out of the tyranny of joiner, mover, leaver, and login. If we just wait for, like, when's a joiner event happening and I can manage access, or what's a mover event? When are they going to log in? If I look at the number of those events in the day, those are the only opportunities I have to affect an access-related control. Wow, the speed of our business, just the humans, the carbon-based life form, that's not in step with that. If I then look at the needs of workload identity and AHIs, it's not on pace there. And it is comedically out of pace with what we think AI and agents will require. So it is a way to say, look, can we enforce our identity controls continuously? So when things change, take action that may govern access. Can I do this based on a little bit of contextual information, which we talked about in the past? Just a little clue that's just out of reach of my identity systems. It could be PagerDuty. Who's supposed to be working right now? It could be your EDR vendor. It could be your ticketing system. But a clue that says, look, this is going to change the access that Jim should have. And then can I do that consistently across my infrastructure as opposed to having silos of policy? And that's something that actually Paul Mazzaro was talking about today in his authorization management platforms talk, which I thought was really neat. But really it's about breaking out of the tyranny of joiner, mover, leaver, login and affect our controls more continuously for the outcome of less human in the loop processes, a more reasonable and effective way to limit the abuse of access and the misuse of access, and do so without having to throw out everything that you've already invested. Make it as an incremental process that can get you to what we think will be the coming new platform, the coming new style of identity architecture.
I was talking to my friend Shashwat earlier today, and we're kind of talking about this continuous ID paradigm shift that we're in right now. And I don't know if people really understand what it means. It sounds cool. Like, okay, great. It's more than just product. It's data, it's business process. And the way that I've kind of described it to people is instead of batch identity, meaning joiner, mover, later, right? Event-based things, it's data-driven. Mm-hmm. It is, millisecond-based identity versus daily or weekly based identity. And I think like that's the only way you can keep up in today's world, especially when you have AI, agentics, you have, all the different NHI types that are out there. And these are ephemeral identities that are being spun up, spun down, doing things while they live, shutting down. And that idea of continuously evaluating what is happening. But you can't do that without data.
That's correct.
And I think that is a big gap that a lot of organizations in the real world struggle with.
They don't struggle with the lack of data. That's for darn sure. I think I have yet to meet an identity practitioner that's like, yep, my data is good. Like, there's not a problem, right? But I think we've kind of had this weird learned helplessness about this in the sense of like, HR data is crap. It's always going to be crap. And our authority to go make them change that data to not be crap is zero. Let's be honest about that.
That's one of the big reasons why IGA products cost $500,000 to implement. It's like all of our processes are broken, all of our data is garbage. So we bought a product. You can't just slam it in.
You can't, but I also think that there is good enough data. And we should acknowledge that in a lot of cases, good enough data is in fact good enough. Yeah. And then if I want to pull that contextual information and that extra data, those often are domain-specific sets of information. Your EDR system is really good about EDR data, right? Your PagerDuty data, right? Your duty rosters, in theory, are pretty darn good about it because otherwise someone's getting called at 3 a.m. and they're going to be pretty pissy about it and they're going to fix that data. So I think some of these domain-specific sources of information are good enough to work with because you only need a small sliver of it. And that allows us to make a little bit of progress, to sort of shake lucidly, like, I have to have every source of data fully correlated, fully scrubbed, isn't just a thing. But, Jeff, there's another thing besides having data. It's the timeliness that data can get around. And this is where something like shared signals framework is so important in continuous identity. The analogy I like to use is that we are at the part of the story where everyone needs a telephone. And as everyone gets a telephone, by that I mean a shared signals framework receiver and maybe a transmitter, then we can do all of these value add things on top of it, but we're just in the beginning of the story where we're building on a telephone network and we're standardizing what that looks like. So that's an incredibly exciting time from a standards perspective. And it's incredibly enabling as that comes to pass. But the nice thing is we don't have to wait for full standards adoption, which we know will never happen. You can still make progress today, even in proprietary signals, to do some really amazing things in a timely fashion.
The comment I wanted to make is, I think, a follow-up on what Jeff was saying, because I think it's a mindset shift. And I think you run into identity practitioners, leaders, who are in different stages, in organizations that are different stages of their life cycle. Maybe they have nothing or next to nothing. Maybe they are mid-deployment of your big big boys, IGA, single sign-on, privilege access management, or maybe they're very mature. If you were in any of those three buckets, what would you do with shared signals? Would you prioritize it before kind of moving ahead, or?
If I had nothing, right? If it was truly a greenfield organization, that's, I think, a bit of a special case because I don't think most people live in a greenfield. There, I would say, build for a real-time identity infrastructure, build for continuous identity day one. And I've certainly talked to some practitioners who are lucky enough to be in an organization where like, yep, we're greenfielding, or we are designing a greenfield solution alongside our brownfield existence solution because we know this can't keep going, right? We're burning money maintaining it.
I see organizations that are at zero where they're either have a custom homemade solution or they're an organization that should be run centralized, but they're decentralized and they have a bunch of batch scripts, or really it's usually service desk tickets where it's like somebody just manually goes and executes out a ticket. Sorry, go ahead.
It is fine. And I think that's actually a really good point, which is that there are identity teams that are, let's say, aligned to identity as productivity tools, right? Nominally the CIO's office, right? Those are those access management teams that are essentially decoding those tickets. And then you see identity teams aligned as a security control, right? So you see identity first security teams more closely aligned with the CISO's organization or in a weird nether zone between the two. And for some organizations, the ability to automate that first sort of ticket processing, that seems like it's ripe for AI as a booster, right? Like I think that's a fertile ground for actual, real, meaningful progress to be made. On the identity first security side of things, now we're saying we have the plumbing in place. We have a reasonably stable architecture. What we don't have is a way to break out of the tyranny of joiner, mover, leaver, login. And this is where they're saying, I want to put in a shared signals infrastructure. So at the very least, I can get telemetry that can allow me to make decisions more quickly. I will still work through the existing plumbing to do that. And that is subject to the same constraints we've had in the past. Is it connected to all the systems? Do we have everything wired up to SSO, et cetera? But that at least gives me the opportunity to react faster. And then we decide where do we want to start mitigating risk and using that as the primary means of doling out access versus the cleanup method.
What does this mean for teams in the real world? So the reason I ask that is a lot of organizations today will have multiple teams doing identity.
Yep.
They've got some authentication taking place in sort of like the IT area, right? Your Windows administrators.
The password people.
Right.
They're everybody's favorite.
Right. And then you've got people who might be in security or help desk that are doing joiner, mover, leaver or access reviews.
Yes.
This concept of continuous identity, is this a opportunity to kind of re-architect the organizational design of an IAM program?
It can be, but it starts with frankly, I think an architect. More often than not when I talk to people, and Sean and Andrew are good examples of that. There's hundreds of them out there that do this sort of thinking about like, we have systems for operation and the identity operations teams that are doing those things. We've got increasing requirements from the CISO's office, whether we sit inside of it or not. This is immaterial. How are we going to go about this knowing that we can't just rip and replace everything? And we shouldn't. That's the wrong decision to make. I think what we'll see is, again, as we bring in some more AI tooling, those access request processing teams, I think those are going to be able to move into other kinds of capacity inside of identity as opposed to being ticket processing, right? I think there's actually something viable there. If I've got those resources, people that have been dealing with customer pain, internal customer, external customer, the one thing they come armed with is an enormous amount of empathy for the people who can't get their damn jobs done, right? And so when you suddenly offer them the opportunity to be like, imagine that we could do this thing in seconds, not weeks. If we could give you the right access without you having to put in an access request, simply our business process of you open the ticket because there's an emergency change needed, and that just magically gives you the access and it goes away when you're done. hell yeah, who's going to say no to that, right? So I think those folks, especially armed with that empathy of realizing like, oh my God, it's been 3 days, I don't have access, and this is really important, like they get the brunt of that. That's not fun, right? So I think they're going to be some of the most eager to be like, wait a minute, you mean I could do this like this? Yeah, sign me up, right? How do I help? I can help write policy. I can help give you that insight into those applications. I think we're going to have a cadre of new practitioners who are freed up to go do some of this work, which I think will be great to see.
You care deeply about the identity practitioner community. You're a co-founder of ID Pro. I wanted you to give us a state of affairs for the identity practitioner.
I think it's a great and tough time. It's a great time because there are new patterns to deploy, new patterns to learn about, and new opportunities to achieve the mission faster. That's awesome. I think it's a tough time because on one hand, AI, which is like just nonstop, like both, how do we protect this? How do we use this? And it's probably very fatiguing, part one. Part two is, names have a lot of power. The problem is that we're grasping for new names for how we do identity. Identity security isn't a thing in my book, right? It's an umbrella under which a whole bunch of companies who have bits and pieces of capability, which can affect different kinds of outcomes, some important, some really important, some not important, are like harbored under right now. And that the analyst community is continuing to come up with new kinds of concepts, IVIP, these others. And I don't think anyone understands what all these terms mean. Like IGA and access management, those terms are really out of date. Right? What they actually mean from a market perspective, what I can buy, what I can deploy, versus the definition of the outcomes that you see, those have drifted apart in a lot of ways. So it's really confusing to understand and say, like, what am I deploying? Why am I doing that? And so the challenge is coming back to what are the outcomes that the organization is trying to seek? And how do these capabilities actually address those outcomes? I think that's a really challenging time. I will say that a friend of the show said to me, I walked around the show floor, not Gartner, but similar. There was dozens and dozens of companies. Every single one of them said they did identity security. It took me 30 minutes with each one of them to figure out what the hell they actually did, which is not a good use of my time. You're like, yeah, and that's more endemic of our inability to, as a practice right now, find those new terms that we can then start to anchor on and say, like, I get it. This is aligned to these outcomes. It gives me these capabilities. I am deficient there. I'm really good there. Great. Let me move on to the next thing. I think this is a weird moment for us in that regard, and a weird moment for practitioners because of it.
So for practitioners, I mean, I feel like the mission has always been the same, ensuring that the right people have the right access. Well, maybe we change the word people to whatever, things and people.
Right.
But
things are people too. That's not it.
Do we now just have a lot more work? Is the community just a lot bigger? Or, because let's take an example like NHI. I think for most identity practitioners, if you went back 20 years ago, NHI meant service accounts or maybe some application IDs that you ran batches with. Well, now it's like there's more non-human accounts or machine accounts than there are humans. So let's face it, it's a lot more work, even if you have the right tools. It's
a lot more work if you expect the work to be fulfilled by that same access request team who's processing tickets. That's an impossible ask. That is truly impossible, especially when you say, well, NHI has all these workloads and it's secrets and it's certs and like, oh yeah, like this is a non-starter, right? Like we have reached the limits of what humans can do with human tooling.
That's right.
And so is it a lot more work? Yes, maybe, but actually maybe not, in the sense of if we had the right tooling to bring to the story, then I can apply policy, I can apply automation, and I can manage this with the same humans that I've got today, versus saying if I had, we used to talk about the ratio of identity practitioners to employees or the ratio of security practitioners to employees. That number is always wildly varying. And one of the economic justifications for products was, how many password resets would you avoid here? Right? It's $25 a password reset, I think, is the apocryphal number that has not been adjusted for inflation and living expenses. But that was how we used to price a lot of especially the lifecycle management tools. We can't take that mentality of like, oh, I have one carbon-based life form to every 10 million silicon ones. That seems like the right ratio, right? Obviously, it's a ridiculous statement, right? So we've got to have modern tooling for modern challenges. I think, very personal opinion on this is, I'm a little bit skeptical in the NHI and AI space of yes, no doubt, volumetrically, there is a lot more of those things to manage, and all of them will have access. Absolutely. Absolutely true. What is the impact of that? I think the NHI one has always been a problem, and we are well into cloud adoption, so we've had this problem for quite some time. It doesn't strike me as problem one to go tackle. I think the agent side of the thing actually represents something that is a problem to say, we've got to get ahead of this or at least be contemporaneous with it, because now we're having delegated access, which we as an industry have never been great at doing and never fully solved. And it's stressing the weakest part of our practice, if you will. So now we've got to put eyes on this thing, because
for sure,
that is going to be a legit problem. But I'm a little suspicious where people are like, you know what, we're going to catalog all the things, all the silicon-based life forms. Great. Now what? Right? Like, oh, look, there's all these workloads. Uh-huh. And now what?
Yeah, what?
Yeah. And I think this is where we're trying to find I think it's, oh gosh, it's, what's her face? I can picture her. I'm blanking on her name. Sizzo. Was it Duo?
Oh,
come on here.
Is it Christine?
Nope. Oh my God, I was on a podcast with her. I'm going to remember this as soon as we stop recording.
Yeah.
Has this great quote, which is like, at some point, you're worried about this vulnerability is like saying there's a window open on the 43rd floor of your skyscraper and you got to go get someone to close it. Like, is it really realistic that someone's going to climb up 43 stories and into the building through that window? And I feel like in some cases we're seeing some of the same sort of reactions in the identity space.
But what if?
But what if? No one wants to be inactive or seen as not to be having thought of that or taken a precaution or what have you, versus saying, we did think about it. We did our evaluation against it. These are the mitigations we have in place. Let's keep going, because we've already had this for quite some time, and it doesn't mean that we won't get popped. We won't get abused, but this is what we have, and be realistic about it.
Are we a mature profession?
Well, if you sample the 3 people in this room, obviously the answer is no.
But where do we at in the life cycle of the identity and access management profession? Like, are we still in the very beginnings? We're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
Are we teething a toddler? Are we, just got our driver's license? Like, where do you see us in the continuum right now?
I think we're in a mature place, but the world around us has changed. So if you were, imagine you were Gen X, just hypothetically. You did not grow up as a digital native. You sort of saw it happen and you learned it and helped shape some of it, but you sort of learned it in your own idioms based on truths you said long ago versus, say, digital natives, if you were, say, Gen Z. So I think in some regards, a lot of practitioners have gray hair and have really matured their skills and the totality of skills, the ability to communication skills, the ability to understand technical architecture, the ability to communicate to the business. They've done an enormously good job at that. What's happened is, as we've been doing that, the world has also been innovating as well. And so a mature practitioner now confronted in an unfamiliar territory of saying, okay, I've got to learn these new things. I have to learn a whole new set of languages around AI and all the tooling that go along with that for that, or even the NHI for that matter, may not really have ever dealt with anything other than service accounts. So I think we have a mature practice that's now confronted with a different world. And the question is that practice, if it's out of step, how do we mature that? If our practitioners are missing skills, which I don't think they are, but how do they mature those skills as well? So we have to decouple sort of the practice and the practitioner. Both have matured, but they matured in a world that join, remove, leave, or login was okay enough. And now we're not there. And I think that's the tension maybe underneath some of like how practitioners feel about what they're doing.
So I'm going to disagree slightly, but I think there are skills that a lot of people need to learn that think they're an identity that they have not learned. And I'll use authentication as an example.
I knew you were going there, but I want to hear you say it out loud.
A lot of people think authentication is identity and access management.
So they have a name. They're called CISOs.
They're also sysadmins and they're Windows admins and they're, all that kind of IT folk, right?
Yep.
And I used to be part of that. And it's certainly the A. It's the access in identity and access management. Mm-hmm. But there's so much more to it. And my concern is that for those folks who are not putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, they're dealing with an incomplete picture. They know one small sliver of identity.
Yeah.
And there is so much more to it.
And they're also going to pick up that tool that addresses that sliver, no matter which end of it they use. Damn it, they're going to hammer that nail in, and
everything is SSO. Everything is MFA, and that's kind of it. And there's so much more to it. And I get concerned when I see really smart people neglect the soft skills that go around a well-rounded identity professional. If you can't explain what it is you're doing to somebody who's not technical, you need to learn that skill. You can't document it. It's another way.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think one of the things I see most typically in talking to practitioners who have been at this 10, 15, 20 years is fatigue around that. Like, how many times do I got to give the same talk? And it's hard to stay passionate about something, right? It's hard to stay engaged if you're just on a treadmill on that. So I don't think you're wrong at all. The thing that we have lacked in a lot of cases is metrics we could express that matter to anyone other than us. Mm-hmm. And especially because a lot of our metrics are what I like to call suck less metrics. Like, all right, we're less horrible at this today than we were yesterday, which is important because that is how you have a growth mindset, right? It's like, I have to be just slightly better today than I was yesterday, or at least suck less than I did yesterday. And we really haven't nailed this is a clear expression of the outcomes that other people care about that you can baseline us with. I think there is one, hopefully I'll be talking about this a little bit more, which is entitlement exposure hours or entitlement exposure days. Simply say, take an entitlement, how long has it been granted across and you can do this per capita, right? Per carbon-based life form, per silicon-based life form. You can actually slice and dice this in a variety of interesting ways. But if I actually look at the total hours that a entitlement has been statically assigned and just sitting out there, that becomes a number we can baseline by application type, by population again, and then drive that down where the risk warrants it being driven down. And right now, the way people do that is access certification. That's proven to be semi-effectual at best. It is certainly a great way to annoy people.
It's everyone's favorite IAM business process.
It is. I mean, think about this. Like, we have willingly joined an industry where the two things we're known for are flipping passwords and access certification. Like, wow. I mean, you're running for dog catcher and losing. Like, it's unbelievable how unpopular we could be if you think that's the only two things that identity is.
And we gave it to people who don't want to do it and who don't understand what it is that they're doing.
And it's not their damn job to understand what we're doing. Right? It's not. And so
I see no problems with this. No notes. Why aren't we successful?
This seems perfect. Why aren't we? Yes.
This goes back to that SOX conversation.
It does.
We set up all these crapola processes, maybe the password side, but access certification. I mean, I've heard people call it security theater. If it's not done in the right way, then it's just rubber stamped. And I sound like a commercial here, but this is the non-commercial part. It seems like a waste of time to me.
So here's the funny thing. We're sitting here at a Gartner event. And before I was Gartner, when I was at Burton Group, the first new report I wrote was on access certification. And I can vividly remember writing the phrase, big rubber stamp, as a section header, the big rubber stamp, and talked about fatigue and talked about the theater aspect of it. I don't know if you go and look up that document in the modern version that has been edited by many friends over time, whether it still has the big rubber stamp in it, but like, it's a thing, right? It's a thing. And no practitioner enjoys that, right? Because like, what do? I do busy work. I generate busy work for the entire enterprise, but audit says it's cool. Yeah, that's not a t-shirt I want.
So first, Helen Patton?
Yes.
Yes.
Wait, no, not Helen Patton. I can literally picture her. This is gonna.
Helen Patton was the CISO of Duo.
Yep.
And a
Wendy Nather. It's Wendy Nather who talks about this.
We got there.
Saved it.
We did it.
Thank you, Brady, for being
saved it.
so
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay. I wanted to add something to the identity practitioner skills, which was 25 years ago. If somebody said, I want to learn the technology that I can use in identity, I'm not sure what path I'm going to go down. You'd probably say LDAP. Learn LDAP, because all the tools are based on LDAP. I think you'd have a hard time figuring out where to start today.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you'd say learn cloud computing, and then it'll probably send you in the right direction. Or learn Microsoft. It'll give you a taste of all these different things. I don't know. I wanted to go back to one of the other points. So this is a typical Jim question, right? I try to hit like 5 different points in one question,
okay,
and then expect you to understand what I really wanted you to answer.
42.
Is the answer to everything.
Woo. Okay, we can turn off the podcast now. Okay, so I was going to ask you, are we solving the same problems with different buzzwords? And I think if you said, okay, well, what's the buzzword of the moment? It would be AI. And I would say, okay, well, yeah, same problems, different buzzwords. But I think it goes back to something I was talking to you about earlier, which was, is it just more work? Or the same number of people expected to do more work? And you said, well, no, they need the tools to be able to scale. Mm-hmm. The only tool that I can think of that'll do that is, at a high level, is AI.
So what if the cure was also the cause of the disease? Is that the question?
Well, no, because I know that you also brought up the agent piece. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to compartmentalize that, push that to the side.
Okay.
But I kind of envision that, like, even for a practitioner to come in and say, I do identity at this organization, or I run a team, I'm not going to get any more resources, but my scope keeps getting bigger and bigger all the time. I need automation tools. I think that comes in the form of AI.
Let's go back into earlier in that question, which is, are we solving the same problems with new buzzwords? Let's reform that to, are we delivering the same outcomes with either new buzzwords or new tools or what have you? And I think this points to the decision that none of us made but backed into, which is 20 years ago, identity was primarily, if not exclusively, a productivity tool. The outcomes we were delivering were productivity. All right. How fast can I get that $1,000 a day staff aug person productive on our systems? That was the problem we solved. Now, the other problem we solved was, can I avoid password reset? Because we were selling SSO back then. So the outcomes we were delivering were productivity and, frankly, user experience, give or take. The outcomes we need to deliver now look pretty darn different from that. And because of that, a sort of side helping of that, or the side dish of that is, and we need those outcomes to be for more constituents than we have traditionally necessarily addressed. That the enterprise itself has not necessarily had in the form of agents. The NHI thing has gone from quaint just service accounts to ephemeral workloads and lambdas and all of the things that sort of flit in and out of experience, but deliver a huge amount of business value. So the outcomes we're being asked to solve, either implicitly or explicitly, are different ones. And with that comes new constituents to serve. And so I think that's the framing to look at this problem. And maybe the a takeaway for someone who is in a less mature organization, either from a cybersecurity perspective or an IT perspective, is if I am, for reasons, trapped in the outcomes are productivity and experience, how do I sneak in some of these other outcomes that are about blast mitigation, reducing windows of access exposure, making good on zero trust promises through identity? That's going to be the art. Right? Because if you're pinned in and painted with you're the password gal, you're the SSO guy, it's going to be really hard to go fight the fights that you need to, right? Just have the outcomes that we think the organization needs. So I think it's going to be some of that story crafting, essentially that narrative around, under the guise of productivity, what if I told you I could get rid of all of your access request processes, or 90% of them for critical systems? People would be like, oh, the best approval process to go through is the one that doesn't exist, right? Yeah, okay, sign me up for that. All of a sudden, you're now solving different outcomes. That's going to be the sort of forward frontier that we've got to understand as a practitioner.
It's kind of like continuous identity.
It's kind of like a continuous identity.
It's behind the scenes. It's under the covers. It's the best security because it's invisible and it just works.
It still leads to crappy demos, right? So identity, one of the reasons why we're also always struggle a little bit is like, think about our demos. I click on this and now you are into Salesforce.
Right.
Ta-da!
Now let's look at the logs to show
exactly.
you.
It is one of the least compelling demos one can have, but now it's actually kind of humorous about that. Like, and now I'll do the nothing up my sleeve part. Notice there is no session, and now there is a session. Ta-da! That hasn't helped us.
Tell me you've given a tech demo without telling me you've given a tech demo. That is a perfect example of it. I'm going to ask you to put on your prognosticator hat and tell me at Gartner next year, how many companies will be continuous identity? The same way that we've had agentic identity and before that zero trust identity and blah, 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 right? Every single fad.
I think we're going to have 3 camps, right? And it'll be interesting to see if Gartner, if you're listening, you should organize the floor in the following manner. There should be the aisle of identity security, an aisle of identity first security, or if people actually realize what's supposed to be going on with the other guys. You're still going to have a healthy flavor of agentic security. By then, we will probably have a new name for it. And then there'll be continuous identity. So I think, like, let's say 25%. What is interesting to me is I think myself and others look at a lot of the things that are happening on the agentic side and say, I remember when this forest fire blew through the last time and it was blockchain and identity. And it's taken 15, 20 years. And now we're like, you know what? Credentialing employees after we proofed them as a way to onboard them starts to feel like a much better approach. We just didn't know that 15, 20 years ago. I think it won't be 15 or 20 years when we realize what the agentic thing, where the ball really stops there. But I think we're still in that sort of fervor, let's say, and there is good outcomes that need to be had here. We're early days on that still. That's still in the hype cycle.
I feel like it's just a marketing term waiting to get co-opted by every single company in IAM that is going to have a continuous identity solution of some sort. I
will be eager for that day because that implies that we can go to every one of them and ask them a very simple question. Tell me if you are shared signals framework compliant. Have you gone through conformance testing? Because if the answer is no, then that's BS. Simple as that.
I love it. That's a great.
That cuts down a 30-minute conversation. What the hell do you do to, like, am I going to pay attention to you? Yes, sweet. Let's talk about how you do what you do. No, all right, I'm going to keep on walking.
Point me to your shared signals documentation.
Yeah.
It's a great way to get rid of all the chaff that's out there.
Yep, that's a good way to remove the noise.
So how close to an identity salon conversation was this podcast? And for those who don't know, what is Identity Salon? And I don't want to get in trouble with Andy, Chatham House rules, right? You don't talk about, it's like Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club.
So let's step back.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a while. And I've been involved in helping to build big tent organizations like ID Pro, right? To help practitioners learn from one another. But I'm interested in practitioners of sort of all points in their life cycle and in their understanding of what this practice is. And so one thing I observed a couple of years ago was events like this are powerful and important for a certain kind of practitioner at a point in their maturation and in their tenure. And that there were fewer and fewer places for people that have been doing it for a long time at a high level to go and sort of freely talk with one another in a safe space. Identity Salon grew out of that, which was a need to bring together people that are looking at some of the most difficult aspects of identity at large scale with a 3 to 5 year timeline. Because they're working in enterprises that are global and that can't just turn on a dime. So like, how do we build a sustainable architecture that's going to get us to that next thing? So we've hosted a few of these salons. They are Chatham House rules. So we provide a safe space for people to come together and talk. We produce after each of those events a very detailed report, non-identifying who talks about things, but what are the topics?
That's what Chatham House rules are, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That you can use everything you've learned, you just can't identify who actually was talking about those things. So Heather Flanagan does an amazing job building these really detailed reports, and that becomes available to anyone who's attended the event. And so Identity Salon is a place where people can have these kinds of conversations. How is this one? Salon tends to spend an hour on one question, right? And we were talking about lever events in a supply chain. Imagine you're in consumer packaged goods, your global organization, you've got a variety of people that are fulfilling different aspects of your supply chain. You don't have access, they don't all have SSO, and you don't have access to HR. How do we manage this, right? Are there patterns that are in other industries? How do we address this? We spent an hour on that one.
Well, the real answer is best guess.
Well, and it's a topic that we've been trying to solve for is the beginning of IAM.
Delegated admin, I think.
Delegated admin's a big part of it, right?
Yeah, well, but point being is that we give a space for people to have these conversations and then say like, okay, are there material steps we can make? How do we start to do that? Where should they happen? How do we get this conversation in more places? And it's a lot of fun. It is exhausting for everybody, right? Because you've got 30 people in a room that are pretty high wattage. And the conversations are intense, and they go deep and they go wide, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Much like this.
Yeah, well, we do our own version of it here.
Absolutely.
We just broadcast it to the world.
Yeah, you do. And you don't like pixelate me or give me like a robotic voice.
Good, I guess. I mean, at some point it'll be very easy to do like Ian as a VTuber, right? Something, from an identity mascot perspective. So. We usually end shows on a lighter note, but I want to turn.
But we're not this time?
Right, but we're not going to.
Wait a minute.
We're going to end with chuckles, and I want Jim to explain why he's given out chuckles.
I'm glad
everybody
you
in
brought
the
this
room.
up. Okay, so during Ian's presentation, which he gave at Authenticate, he talked about the guys from Enron. He had pictures of them and asked, does anybody in the room know who these chuckleheads are? And immediately my mind went to Chuckles Candy.
It's upside down. Product placement. and by the mic, so thanks.
Denise and I went out one night, that very night, to a old-fashioned candy store, and they had these, and I just had to buy them.
I'm beside myself, and I'm so excited to. They're only 190 calories. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to get so hopped up on sugar after this episode.
Oh yeah, 190 calories, all carbs.
Depleted uranium. I mean, I don't even know what's that.
I'm just impressed at the word chucklehead. I have been using that word for decades, and I never really hear anyone else say it. So I
yeah, thank you. So you guys know I write out all my talks. I write it out word for word what I'm going to say, and then it gets rehearsed to the point that I don't use those words anymore. There were other words to describe them, and I suddenly realized, I'm like, you can't say that on stage. Like, you can't say that. You can't say
If I
that.
brought you those things to the podcast today, you would not be as happy.
Yeah. So I was like, I landed on chuckleheads. Seemed like a good one. Like, take it off, dust it off the shelf. Take it off the shelf, dust it. It's still a usable phrase.
And there are an awful lot of chuckleheads out there.
There are indeed.
So,
guys, this is awesome. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. This is Gartner 2025 IAM Summit.
This is the last event of the year, right? Like
For me,
are you guys making an appearance anywhere else?
No,
Like a local holiday parade or something?
Hey, you know what? If you've got a local IAM parade and you'd like us to show up,
Let us know.
Come out there and do that. But no, I think this is my last one for the year, and this episode will go live in January. So
Where's Gartner going to be next year?
I think it's Vegas.
I think it's Vegas, baby. I think it's back.
maybe
Yeah.
in December.
I don't know. I kind of hope so because like alternatives include August. That seems horrible.
Yeah, like 8,000 degrees in
No,
Las
you know what I
Vegas in
think?
August.
I think I'm just more comfortable if we take it back to Caesar's Palace. Just keep it same as it ever was. It's predictable.
Yeah.
There's plenty of hotel rooms.
There's plenty of hotel rooms, of which I did not get one this time. Longer story. Yeah, I would.
I know Vegas is polarizing.
Sure.
I think the town is built for conferences.
I don't.
Like it's just.
I don't disagree. It doesn't mean I necessarily seek that out, but yeah,
So, that gives me another opportunity to do Other Mama Supper Club. So for people who were at Identiverse earlier this year, people who know they are, and maybe they're listening, we will be doing another Other Mama Supper Club at Identiverse if Gartner is in fact in Vegas next year and we make it out there.
I've known you for a decade. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Because you weren't there.
Yeah, and I feel like
Sean,
Just this one.
Sean was there, our friend.
I thought he was going to say something about chicken and waffles.
Best chicken and waffles on the Strip so far is Yardbird at the Venetian. So I'm just going to say that right there. There's also a Yardbird in DC.
Talk about product placement.
my gosh,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. So
Where am I?
yeah. So I'm just going to throw it out there for the people who are listening that we're at Other Mama for our supper club. That gives us an opportunity to do that. And we're looking to expand the tent. So I will explain what Supper Club Other Mama Supper Club is after we hit the recording. And if you're curious, let me know because we'll be setting something up for Identiverse. So
Sweet.
with an ominous start to the year.
Exactly.
What does that mean? All right, let's wrap it up. Ian, thank you so much for taking the
Thank you guys.
thank
As
you.
always, and thank you for what you do in the industry. I mean, and it means a lot. It means a lot to a lot of people. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. We like
There's a lot
doing it.
coming from you.
Yeah, we'll keep doing it as long as we like doing it, and then we'll be done. That'll be that. Let's see. We're on the web, idcpodcast.com, on YouTube, idcpodcast.tv. Still growing the YouTube channel. I'd say 99.9% of our...
If we were a different channel, I would say hit subscribe and the bell and smash that like button.
Yeah, or if it's a radio, rip the knob off, right? Remember that one? All right, that's how old we are. So thanks, everybody, for watching and or listening, and we'll talk with you all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.